Pratyakshanumanagamah pramanani. The sources of correct understanding are direct perception, inference, and words written or spoken by authorities. So here we see the English synonyms for each of the Sanskrit words in this shloka or sutra. I think all of them are relatively easy to follow. I just want to make mention of agama, which is authoritative testimony. And in the ancient Vedic culture, since the very beginnings, these authorities were considered what I'll loosely term as scriptural authority or written spiritual texts and words of the great saintly teachers, the rishis, and genuine or bona fide guru. So this is the first of the 5 vrittis mentioned by Patanjali, and it is called pramana, or the different methods of obtaining accurate information about reality. How one perceives and correctly understands reality is dealt with in great detail in the Sankhya Yoga system. We will just touch on it here for a moment. The originator of Sankhya Yoga is the great Kapila Deva, something that has been mentioned to be my spiritual teachers, my guru, was that in reality there were 2 Kapilas. There was the Kapila Deva, who in the most ancient of times was considered an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, and he spoke to his mother Devahuti the Sankhya philosophy. Then a considerable time after that, still in ancient times for us, there was another proponent of Sankhya who also had the name Kapila, and what he did was codify many of these teachings in a Sankhya text. And sometimes there is a bit of confusion between these 2 personalities. Vyasa, the commentator, or the earliest known commentator that we have on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, he concludes his commentary by stating that this is the commentary of Sankhya Yoga as that is propounded on the yoga philosophy propounded by Patanjali. So we understand that not all of the principles that were presented by the second Kapila are completely in line with older Vedic authority and Vedic teachings. So for that reason, we don't necessarily accept all of Vyasa's commentary as being what Patanjali actually meant. For myself and others in such lineages, we understand that the commentary must align with Vedic authority, Agama. So direct sense perception is one of the items being mentioned here. And here it is referencing, of course, to the ordinary senses. But there has to be this understanding and appreciation about the sense of limitations, or the limitations placed on the senses. It is true that our 5 senses can indicate to us some reality as opposed to a fantasy, but we also understand that there are limitations to this perception in terms of whether we are really perceiving the ultimate spiritual reality. Our eyes, we understand, are very limited, and one must be gifted with spiritual vision, which is what the quest for spiritual realization is all about, in order to truly see things as they are. So while direct perception of things gives us a sense of what is real or apparently real to us, that things of substance is probably a better way to put it in this world, we understand there is a limitation, and the same thing also applies for the use of logic, here called anumana. We can learn that, for instance, by the process of deductive logic, how heat can burn simply by observing someone else. For instance, if I see a young child or someone accidentally touching like a candle, the flame on a candle, and they burn their finger, then I can deduce from that, whenever I see this thing that's emitting heat and light called fire, that it is capable of burning. I can also extend that logic to anything that is emitting or giving off enough heat that if I get too close to it, I can also be burned. So this is the use of deductive logic, or anumana. It, however, does have its limitations, as we'll speak about that in a minute. Agama, this term, an authority, is in the common sense. We could use it, for instance, as a professor in a university. If I want to study some subject and I approach somebody that has that knowledge already, then they can impart that to me, and I can derive or come to a correct understanding on a particular subject. But it should be understood that the authoritative speaker does not create agama, but is whatever is being presented is considered agama if it is actual truth, and therefore the person speaking it can be considered an authority. So if a teacher is wrong in what they are saying or presenting, then that is not agama. It's not just a blind acceptance of authority based upon external things. It's based upon their ability to speak and to pass on that which is truth. In the Vedic teachings of agama, or testimony, the way they present it is even a much higher principle. Our senses are limited, and therefore cannot show that there is no reality beyond the limits of our perception, if you understand that. I mean, if I can only see a distance of, just for example, 5 miles or 5 kilometers, and then everything is gone from my vision. I can probably see further than that, but just for example, if anything exists beyond the limits of what I can see, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that I have limited sensual perception. Vedic pramana, distinguishes between logic and testimonial authority. The word shabda means sound, literally means sound, but the shabda that is cited as authoritative Vedic testimony is known by the term Shabda Brahma. Shabda Brahma, or spiritual sound, is considered the ultimate authority. So it is in a category by itself, distinct from logic or anumana and pratyaksha, or direct perception. Spiritual sound, as opposed to ordinary sound, is also known as what's called svataha pramana, and that means its authority is self-evident. It does not derive its authority from another pramana. But this is a quite deep subject. I didn't want to get too deeply into it, but just wanted to mention it here.